be the worst form of torture I could ever endure, which was basically like what Amy Rowe, the reporter for Willamette Week, and Basil, her friendly photographer, asked me. They asked me before they wrote this horrible article about me, what is the worst thing that you think could ever be done to you? And I told them what it was, and then they proceeded to do just that. So here's Krista asking me if I would prefer, what would be worse to me, torture or death, or what would be the worst form of death that I could imagine having. And actually, she really wanted to know death. She didn't ask me about torture to begin with. She asked me what kind of death would be the most horrific to me. And my response was, I don't really think death would be as bad as being tortured, because if you're tortured, you have to suffer endlessly. And after I told her this, then my son and I are tortured. I mean, yes, there was already torture occurring, but we were really tortured, I mean, to the point of extremes. And I remember I did call her because I believed that she knew somebody that was connected to what was happening to me and my son. So I told her what was happening, and I was crying. I said, my son's not even talking anymore. We're being tortured at night. And even though I knew she was not on my side, I just thought maybe somebody out of the compassion of their heart would stop. And then, and before I even called and made this call, kind of pleading for help in a way, or talking about what was going on. Before that call, she had another call with me before this happened to me and my son on our bed. She wanted to know where our bed was in the room, where I slept, which room we slept in, and next to which window. And I remember thinking, why did she want to know our exact location as to where we were sleeping in the house? She wanted to know if we lived downstairs or upstairs in that house, because the house was split up into several different apartments. She wanted to know if we were living downstairs or upstairs, and then she wanted to know by what window and where. And and she made it all sound very kind of natural, like, oh, and do you guys sleep by the window, or does he like that? She tried to make it sound natural, but it wasn't natural at all. It was just sort of like, why did she need to know the entire layout of my house? And why it basically made it sound like, and later when we were being tortured, I thought what they were trying to figure out how to not torture other people in the house, but how to isolate just me and my son. So then my son and I were being tortured at night while we slept by this form of technology. And I called, and I was desperate and making these kind of pleas, just like I didn't know what to do. And then she said, she didn't really say anything, and then after a week, and then it stopped after I told her. It stopped maybe for a week. And then for that whole week, there was nothing that happened at night. So she called me up, and she said, so are you guys still having that problem? And I said, yes, we are. And then after that, she didn't want to talk to me anymore. Because she knew, and she got really suspicious sounding again, because she already knew that what had been used against me and my son had quit for an entire week. So she expected me to say, yes, it quit. And instead, when I lied to her and I said, no, it's still happening, she didn't like the fact that I lied to her, because she knew it wasn't happening. So who she knows that is responsible for that kind of thing, I can only imagine, because she's connected to Dick Whittemore. She's connected to her own dad, who's connected to the Department of Justice, and she's connected to people in Texas through her sister. And she has told me herself, and she did tell me herself, that I didn't know what kind of powerful and rich people she knew. And she said it in sort of a threatening way when she told me. She said, you don't have any idea what kind of power and money the people I know have. She worded it slightly differently, but not very much differently. she used the word power and she used the word money, and said it was about, basically said I had no idea. And that if I thought, the Tabos had money, and people on the East Coast who are kind of like what I call the quiet rich, who have a lot of money but they don't really flaunt it about, or they're not necessarily celebrities but they're still rich, they still go in social circles sometimes, but they're not necessarily, out on the front page celebrities. She basically just let me know that I didn't know who I was dealing with. And I did find out that she's connected in a roundabout way to Paris Hilton. So, that would be one celebrity in California who is a celebrity sort of person and is known. And I think there were other people she knew as well through other individuals. She knows this one person who knows so-and-so. Like, probably only one time removed. But she knew. So Krista absolutely knows who is responsible for torturing me and my son. And she didn't like the fact that I lied to her, because I had already broadcasted the fact that I lied about when I was having my periods, and then I was able to figure out that my migraines were being triggered not for natural reasons, but they were being triggered around my menstrual cycle to make it look like they were natural when they weren't. So she knew, when I basically emailed this to a bunch of people, she knew that the person that I had been talking to about my periods when I had them was her. So then all of a sudden, my son and I are being tortured, and she's asking the question after the torture stopped for over a week. She's calling up saying, so did it stop? And when I said, no, it didn't, and I lied, she knew that I did not trust her. That if I was lying to her then, that I had lied to her in the past about things. So I was on to her. And the torture against me and my son started up again right after that phone call.